So welcome to a special edition of the Football Reporter. Now, I'm in New York ahead of the World Cup final on Sunday, but England won't be here. James and Tom have been with England from seemingly the start of the year, but it's always the start of June with the pre-tournament training camp in Florida. Now, you guys are both still in Atlanta. I'm not quite sure what your movements are, whether you're going to head to Miami for the third and fourth place or whether you're just going to kind of pull your head under a duvet and forget about it. But we have to talk about what happened last night and how England go forward from here. So first of all, James, your reflections on the game. I think we all went there thinking England can win this game, but again, we left thinking, didn't happen this time.
Yeah. I mean, I was so convinced that they were going to lose to Mexico. I'd written it in all the previews that we'd done, and even in sort of the some of the more recent stuff we've done during the tournament. I just had that game in my mind as being exactly the type of fixture that England don't come through on foreign soil. They just don't win those games abroad in big tournaments. And having come through that, you sort of hope that they would then take the self-belief from that, the confidence from that, and that we'd go and see them play at another level. And, for 55 minutes, an hour or so against Argentina, they matched them. They weren't intimidated. They tried to play their football. And then what we saw in the final 30 minutes was what we've seen for 20, 30 years with England. It's these habitual cyclical problems that are a combination of a lack of self-belief, a lack of fatigue, a lack of freshness, fatigue in their legs, and ultimately a lack of quality, because once again they've been beaten by the first truly elite team they've played. And I think every 2 years we seem to sit here and say that, no matter who the manager is.
Tom, what are your thoughts? I know you've been with James throughout the tournament watching England, and I don't know. I think, you go into these games, you get it's the hope that kills you in many ways. But there was a lot of hope yesterday because Argentina, prior to yesterday, I didn't think they were a great team. I think they're a good team with a great player. But to be fair, they showed their greatness by winning that game last night. But England had it in their hands and they threw it away, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at that first half, what was it? I think there were 3 shots in the entirety, probably nothing for the first half now. It was basically a dogfight. And so Argentina took all the tempo out of the match, but England managed it quite well. England then got the lead in the 55th minute. And then there's that stat doing the rounds that from the minute Anthony Gordon scored to when Lautaro Martinez scored in the 92nd minute, England had 12% possession. Now, you're going to give a team of Argentina's quality, with Messi, with everyone else, Alvarez and what have you, roughly 37 minutes with 88% of the ball, you're going to get punished. This isn't the same as Mexico, where England could play a back five and get away with it. They just about held up Norway. They did a job on Erling Haaland. But this team, Argentina, knows what it takes to win a World Cup. They've unpicked defences before, and they've already shown it in this tournament, how when their back's against the wall, they find a way to get through. So negative tactics in the end did them. I don't think England have been helped at all by the wear and tear they've suffered through this tournament. I think they came into it exhausted. Several players were exhausted as it was. And so, look, ultimately, though, there was a World Cup semi-final to be won. And I think had things been managed better, had perhaps decisions gone slightly different ways, substitutions been made in a slightly different manner, then England would be preparing for Spain on Sunday.
I thought there was a great quote by the Argentina coach, Lionel Scaloni, after the game, where he said that when the game was there to be won, he said his players played like 7 or 8 year olds in a playground. He said they played without fear, without consequence. It was just a case of play, play, play. And we've had this is a broader discussion, but there's a theory in the game now that players that have come through academies that play for the top clubs, they are coached out of having that natural instinct. And when things aren't going right, a player doesn't know what to do because they are told what to do. And then if they do that, that's fine. But if it comes to doing something else, they don't know what to do. And I think Argentina just knew what they had to do last night. They found a way. England were kind of looking for somebody to guide them over the line. They were looking at Thomas Tuchel. They were looking at each other. Kane and Bellingham, I thought, were poor last night. Somebody there has to pick up the mantle like the Argentina players did. But ultimately, it does come back to the coach because Thomas Tuchel was hired to be the guy that spotted that happening to make sure it didn't happen. Because, James, I don't mean you've been at England games, big England games in the past where you're watching Gareth Southgate and he just looks lost on the touchline. Well, that was Gareth Southgate again last night. Thomas Tuchel was supposed to be the guy, the elite coach,
Yeah.
the Champions League winner that would be different. And it was no different. It was actually worse.
Yeah. He fell into the same trap. You see, this is why I think this is a complicated issue. That I've seen a lot of reaction this morning that's been quite binary. It's sort of either it's all on the players or it's all on Tuchel, and it's both. It's both. You know, they were already retreating before he went to a back five. They were already moving back towards their own goal, and I've seen this. This is the 9th tournament I've covered with England. I've done every single tournament game that England have been at since 2006, and it just follows the same pattern. And it's a combination of fatigue and its mentality. The problem is Thomas Tuchel compounded it, and the Konsa for Gordon change is, I think, the one that he'll regret in time, because we can talk about how they played against Mexico and Norway. They always had an outlet ball in those games. Look at, obviously the penalty they got in Mexico was a counter-attack with Gordon going through. I think it was a long ball, flick on from Kane, Gordon. They had no pace. They offered nothing going the other way to Argentina. And that bit is on Thomas Tuchel, because that's a tactical issue, that they're not offering any counter-attacking threat whatsoever. Argentina were worried about England driving forward with the ball. I know what you mean about Bellingham and Kane being quieter than they had been in previous games. But whenever Bellingham drove with the ball, I think the 2 yellow cards that the Argentina centre-backs got, both were pulling Bellingham back on the break. And he was having those runs. He was starting to get those runs. And it all stopped. And that is, even look at the Enzo Fernandez equaliser, where the ball shifted to him on the edge of the box. Bellingham's trying to get out. They're so deep. That's tiredness. That's fatigue. That is a situation where the players are retreating towards their own goal out of a combination of tiredness and fear. A little bit of fear has crept in. But tactically, you're not asking any other question of Argentina than, can you break us down? And they had to ask 2 questions. They had to say, can you break us down? And also, can you stop us on the counter-attack? And they didn't ask the second question at all. And when you allow attack of that quality, as Tom said, 37 minutes to answer that question, they're going to find a way to do it. But I think we should also say the cross for the winning goal from Messi is ridiculous. The quality of that delivery is exceptional, to put it there. With how tall is Lautaro Martinez? And he's got a free header 4 yards out.
That's the point. He's got a free header. That is the point. It's a great cross, but you've got 2 centre halves who are just like, there you go. He's not the biggest centre forward, Martinez, but he's scored a goal when he could have been marked. But I just want to make the point as well about Tuchel's squad selection, because people say, it's hindsight, etc. But I did think that he missed a trick by not having a Cole Palmer or a Phil Foden in the squad. Now, yeah, they got to the semi-finals, but they beat teams on the way to the semi-finals. They can beat by playing the English way. But when you need to beat a team that's got extra quality, you need to find something different. Last night was a game for Cole Palmer, because he would have brought an X factor to that game, even a Phil Foden, because it was just runners. And I was sat next to you, James, and I'm saying, when is he going to put Rashford on? When is he going to put Rashford on? Because I thought Gordon had a great 60 minutes, but he ran out of steam. Morgan Rogers the same. Now, Marcus Rashford's defensive capabilities aren't the best, we know that, but he would have terrified Argentina with his pace and his movement, and it would have given them something to worry about on the other side of the pitch. It would have given England an outball. And again,
and Saka. Saka,
we know that Saka's had an injury, but you're right, absolutely. Two players that can really hurt the opposition, and he brings in Ezri Konsa. That is strange. Tom, you probably got the same feelings that we have. It's just a very, very strange way to go.
Yeah, and if you look at what Scaloni did on the other side, I think bringing on Gonzalez completely changed the whole dynamic, because suddenly Jed Spence was pinned back and they had to bring on Nico O'Reilly to try and counter that threat which he was posing. From there, you saw Alexis McAllister suddenly came into the game. He hit the post with a header, hit the post with a shot as well. Those 2 midfielders, Enzo and Alexis McAllister, suddenly got so much space. And that's exactly what you're trying to prevent by bringing on this defence. And they left the gap. We saw the same against Mexico in some regards, where had Javier Aguirre kept Quinones on the pitch, I think England would have had real trouble, because he was someone who could play in between the defensive line and midfield. He could unpick that area, unpick that block. And that's what happened last night with Gonzalez. Suddenly, England were undone by a short corner. Messi, finds Enzo on the corner of the box. As you said, as James said, Declan Rice probably would have been there to sort of run at him and try and close him down. But of course, fatigue, everything else. And then suddenly Nico O'Reilly probably does the right thing by showing Messi onto his right foot. But of course, Messi's also happens, his left foot's astonishing and his right foot's, well, also immense. So look, it's so strange. And I think the Dan Burn substitution as well. Now, I'm a signed up member of the Dan Burn fan club, but that's why he was there, right? But to protect the near and the far post against those sorts of crosses, because he's 7'10", so he should be there trying to prevent these rather than letting Martinez get the time and space where he can go in between two England central defenders to nod home. But look, if you look at the balance of substitutions, Scaloni's changed the game. Gonzalez, I think, completely changed the whole dynamic. He's suddenly being able to cross from deep, cross from the byline, run a little bit further into the box, and that's fundamentally what changed the game.
James, you've written a piece, I think, overnight about Tuchel's future, that the FA still back Thomas Tuchel. We know he signed a new contract, I think, February, March time. So he's tied down to the Euros at 2028 at least. I mean, yeah, they've got to a semi-final, so that is, I guess that's a successful tournament. But do you think the FA have been a bit hasty and just brushing this away and saying everything's fine, we'll crack on and we'll do better next time?
Yeah, I mean, Tom and I have the same info on this. They were very quick to sort of circulate the idea that they're happy with, well, I mean, they're not happy with going out, but they're happy with the tournament and Tuchel's performance in it. I don't see there being any change in that in the coming days and weeks. But look, I mean, there was a lot of talk before the tournament about them giving him a new deal, extending it through to 2028 before the tournament, and that being a little bit like the Fabio Capello situation in 2010 and what a disaster that turned out to be. I don't think this is history repeating itself. I think there are, we've talked a lot about Tuchel's substitutions and the issues that he's had in this game, but he has changed the game positively in previous matches. He changed the game positively against Croatia in their first group match. They were 15 minutes from going out against Congo. He changed that game positively. We've talked about what he did against Mexico, and he got a lot of credit for that. So there is an element of throwing the baby out with the bathwater here, I think, to some extent. And I think also you want these elite coaches to have the experience of a tournament to take into another one. I think there's some merit in that. I think, yes, he's obviously won the Champions League and he's coached at the highest level, but this is his first tournament. He hasn't experienced this before. And Tom and I talked about this a few times. You could see the pace of the tournament had taken it out of him. I think there were a couple of press conferences. He looked absolutely exhausted, and he will learn from this, I think. Look, you're going to now make the Pep Guardiola argument, aren't you, Mark?
Well, my argument on Pep Guardiola is I think the situation with Tuchel is that I think the FA should be a bit more prepared to have a proper debrief and a review of it, because there are issues. I mean, there's a Jude Bellingham issue, we know that. I mean, how is their relationship? Is it strong enough to go forward? Would Jude Bellingham act like he has done at times under Pep Guardiola? I don't think so. No, like the Pep Guardiola situation, obviously Pep is available. And I think that if he's available, the FA would be not doing their jobs if they didn't sound him out to say, look, Pep, would you be interested? Now, I've been told by somebody at Man City that Pep would be interested because he loves English football, he loves the history of it, the heritage. Now, that hasn't come from Pep or the Pep camp. This is people who just worked alongside Pep at City, so they might be off the mark. But there is a sense that Pep would embrace the challenge of managing England. Now, would he be able to have the impact that he had at Man City and Bayern and Barcelona by working with these players just every month or so? Tactically, I'm not sure that would be the case, but I get in a major tournament, I think he would see things happening quicker than Thomas Tuchel did last night. I think he would also command the absolute respect of the players, which I'm sure that Tuchel's got 95% of the respect, but I do think that Bellingham can be a problem. I don't think he'd be a problem with Pep. But the top 5 shortlist for the next England manager, if there was to be a vacancy, is Pep is the favourite. Eddie Howe at Newcastle is obviously the strong English candidate, followed by Lee Carsley. And then Graham Potter, I think, is the other one, and Mauricio Pochettino. So it's not a great list if you take out Pep. Now, one thing I was told when Southgate stepped down was that Mark Bunningham, the FA CEO, was furious with the people at St George's Park for not having an English candidate ready. They've had all this money and investment over the years, and they didn't have a single English candidate. Now, he was suggested Lee Carsley, which we saw how that played out in the kind of the caretaker stage. That results were fine, but Lee couldn't handle the pressure. So it's a big job on and off the pitch, and I think Pep could handle it. But Would it think it'll happen? Possibly, but I think the FA have to be strong enough to have a proper review. But before we go to that, I think we've got some audio from Thomas Tuchel after the game yesterday when he spoke about his disappointment and his admission that he was at fault for the way the game ended.
I believe that's just the nature of the game. As soon as you lose, you get criticized. It's just what it is, and you get criticized after. No one knows what would have happened if we made different decisions. So it makes no sense to engage in that and lose my head. I'm responsible for them. I took them, so I take the criticism. That's just the way it is. I don't believe so much in an English thing and in a curse or whatever, or in like history repeating itself in these moments. It's just like it's different coaches, different players, different situations, different opponents. So I think basically I believe in the football thing, which for me still as a football coach cost us today.
Tom, I mean, he seems as flat as I've seen Thomas Tuchel. Obviously, they lost the semi-final, but just he looks really, really down.
Yeah, he does. And it's interesting watching him during the game because he goes through absolutely every single emotion. Like the first half yesterday, if you had Tuchel Cam, it would have seen a man who was just increasingly frustrated with the refereeing. The number of water bottles that got thrown to the ball, like these exasperated outpourings of sort of animated hand gestures and sort of screaming into midair, then turning on the fourth official. He obviously lives and breathes every single moment, but equally, I don't know how that necessarily translates to rational thought when you're in a crisis within a football match, where if you're that highly strung, whether you can see wood for trees sometimes. And I do wonder yesterday if they almost sort of retreated into sort of muscle memory with those substitutions, and fundamentally that's the balance of play. I mean, Martinez said afterwards that he felt that England went back into their shell once they scored, and Scaloni was talking about how he felt there's basically a vacuum sucking the ball into England's goal the minute that England scored. So there's fundamental issues there, and I think Tuchel himself will know. Back in March 2025, when he first met the players, he showed them a map of Everest, and he kind of planned out each stage, each camp was going to be a step up to the peak of Everest. So July the 19th was obviously at the summit. That was always his aim. He talked about the second star. And if we're judging him by his own standards, he's fallen short. And he knows that. He knows there's a huge opportunity missed to get England into a World Cup final. And fundamentally, the substitutions and also the player form and fitness and injuries and whatever have gone against him. So you can forgive him if he had a lot on his mind after the match. But as James said, we've seen him all the way through this tournament, and there were times when he seemed really flat and exhausted, and sometimes he was at his sort of charming best, and he could hold a room. And before the Argentina match, his press conference was an absolute he had everyone in the palm of his hand. He was charming. He was talking about cycling around, eating ice cream, and everything else. But when it came down to it, this is what he's judged on. He's a winner. He knows what it takes to win. He's won, Champions Leagues, and this is him admitting that he got it wrong.
Tuchel has talked a lot about his own intuition. One of the things that's separated him out from Southgate is that Southgate looked very methodical. He thought things through with his plan A, and then when plan A didn't work, that was the criticism, right? Is that he didn't know how to change it. He couldn't improvise. He couldn't sort of freewheel his way to an outcome. And Tuchel's been very clear, I think, in a lot of what he said during this tournament, that he wants, when he right back to the squad announcement, when he said, I have this sort of squad of specialists, this team of specialists for every situation. And what I think he wanted to do is sort of arm himself with the tools to sort of say, right, if we want to play this way, we do this. If we're in this situation, we do that. And he wanted to have the option in game to read the situation and go and change it how he felt he needed to. And so you kind of live or die by that, really. And that's why the second part of his answer there, where he talked about, I don't think there's a curse. I think it's, different managers, different coaches, different situations. What he's sort of saying is, I believe as an elite coach that these situations can be solved in game on the field. Well, firstly, if you believe that, you failed because you didn't do it. And secondly, I don't think he's right. I think there is a systemic problem because of the pattern. We see it time and time again. 2018 against Croatia in the semi-final, they go 1-0 up, they lose the game 2-1, they retreat, they start losing possession. They don't keep the ball well enough. They get tired. They lose. The Euro 2020 final, they go ahead. They've got Italy for the taking. Gareth, brilliant at the start to go to the wing backs. The goal in that final is wing back to wing back. Italy are all over the place in the first half. You can go and kill it off. They don't. Second half, Verratti, Jorginho, they take over. They start dictating the play. They push England back, and they lose in a penalty shootout. These patterns happen no matter what the manager is, who the manager is, who the players are. So you have to look at the underlying issues, and the underlying issues are about self-belief and mentality and fatigue. And until England address those two things, plus the key third one, which is that they do not keep the ball well enough in tournaments. Elliot Anderson, an awful lot was expected of him because he'd done it at under 21 level for England. He'd obviously had to come off the back of a great season for Forest, got a big money move to Man City. But it was always going to be a huge ask for him in his first major tournament to go and dictate play and keep England playing and keep the ball in those situations. Until England solve those three problems, they aren't going to win a World Cup or European Championships. They're always going to fall short. So there are those long-standing issues. But when it comes back to Tuchel, who sort of wanted to say, look, I backed myself to sort this out, and he actually made it worse, then those are the two reasons. Those are the two component parts of why England lost. It's Tuchel and it's England's history.
This feels a bit like the Emperor's New Clothes for me about England and Tuchel, because at the end of the day, if that was an English coach, if that was Graham Potter or Eddie Howe that played that way, you'd be saying, hang on, there's no continental flair, there's no nuance here, it's just basic English football. It's like back in the 1990s, it's Graham Taylor football, etc. But because it's Thomas Tuchel, he gets away with it a little bit more because he's got a track record, he's managed big clubs, but ultimately the football was pretty basic. I mean, the Ghana game was one of the worst I've ever seen. So, again, you talk about he went into the tournament with a plan for this, a plan for that, but there was no plan for Argentina, as we said about people like Cole Palmer, Phil Foden, Morgan Gibbs-White. There's no flair player in there. So that is on him. But we're talking about flair players. We're talking about people with self-belief and a big character. Jude Bellingham. Now, Jude Bellingham's had a fantastic World Cup. We can't deny that. 6 goals from midfield, one of the stars of the tournament. But there's always a bit of drama with Jude Bellingham, isn't there? There's always a little bit of something. So, he had that little confrontation with Lionel Messi last night when Messi's reaction was suggested that something pretty insulting had been said by Jude Bellingham. But Jude's trying to tell us, no, nothing really. He was just saying, he should have taken that shot, and everyone, let's believe what Jude says. I'm not sure I do believe what Jude says. I think he's trying to deflect a little bit. He's trying to blame the media, social media again, for seeing something that he didn't believe was there. But that is Jude Bellingham. That is the way we've had to get used to Jude Bellingham over the years. But he's England's best player. So how do we kind of square the circle with Bellingham? Great player, but needs a bit of managing on and off the pitch. James.
Okay, I thought you were going to go to Tom first. Bellingham's had a great tournament, and let's just contextualise this properly. We came into this tournament with a genuine debate about whether Morgan Rogers or Jude Bellingham would play as a 10 for England, and there was merit in that argument because Morgan Rogers had a great season. Tuchel had talked about the October-November sort of period being when he kind of really saw the England identity, the squad togetherness and sort of the nucleus of something that he felt he could harness at a tournament. And Rodgers was brilliant in that period. Absolutely fantastic. So, Bellingham, with his performances in this competition, has put that debate to bed. He's been one of the best players at this World Cup. So that
just very quickly, James. Morgan Rogers did it against rubbish teams in the qualifiers, let's be fair. We can't judge, but Bellingham's done it well.
I understand that, Mark. But what I'm saying is that, remember Bellingham has had an injury. He's not had a great season for Real Madrid. There were obviously issues with him and Gareth Southgate and some of the players at the last Euros. He basically admitted that in one of the in-house Lions Den interviews that he did early on in the
tournament. Despite denying it at the time.
This was it, wasn't it?
Classic Bellingham.
We wrote it. We wrote it at the time. A number of people have written it since, and then it sort of eventually to quite a lot of pushback, and then finally it comes out in the wash. But that's journalism for you. But the way this situation has been managed, actually, I think is a credit to Tuchel, because clearly what he chose to do is he dropped Bellingham. I think was it October, September, October? Was it October? Yeah. I think it was. He dropped Bellingham then, and it was clearly a message to say, look, you've got to fall into line here, and I'm going to handle this differently. Gareth Southgate brought Bellingham into the leadership group at Euro 2024. That was the way he tried to sort of handle that situation, and it didn't work. Tuchel's gone the other way. He's dropped him, and he said, look, you fall into line. My hierarchy is very clear. Harry Kane's the captain. To be promoted Declan Rice to be vice captain. We have this the sort of squad dynamic is set. You are a great player. We want you to be part of it, but you've got to toe the party line and fall in. And he's chosen to sort of butt heads with him. And that goes back right to last summer when obviously he made that repulsive comment that he sort of said, his mum found elements of Bellingham's behaviour repulsive. And he knew what he was doing there. That was the last interview. It was a next day interview with a radio station that he did not have to do before the summer break. So he's put it out there knowing no one's going to see anyone for 3 months over the summer. Yeah. And then they can reconvene. And then in October, he drops him. The messaging has been clear quite a long way down the line with this one. So I actually think credit to Tuchel because he's got the best out of Bellingham this tournament. But Bellingham plays right on the edge. He plays on the edge. And that was a game where there was some extreme provocation yesterday from Argentina. And, they clearly thought they could get a rise out of Bellingham. Look, he's a fantastic player. And maybe with age, he's 23, maybe at the next World Cup when he's 27, he'll harness it a little bit more and he'll maybe rein in some of the excesses. And he maybe won't feel quite so much that the world is against him, because I think that's always been the issue with Bellingham. He seems to feel that all of us, whether it's social media, whether it's journalists, whether it's even some fans, are out to get him. And we're not. I just don't believe that is out there, that exists to the extent that he feels it does. And, he's such a phenomenal talent that I think we all kind of want to focus on that. But every now and again, he sort of bites back or he lashes out or he sort of seems to see these things that aren't there. And I know there are sections of the media. I know there's a certain back page that does the headlines every time Jude Bellingham plays well for England. And I think a lot of people latch onto that and think that single back page is symptomatic of a sort of wider agenda against him. I just, having worked within the industry, worked closely with England for a long time, I don't believe it's there to the scale that he thinks it is. And hopefully someone can get that through to him over the next couple of years. And maybe when we go into a home Euros in 2 years' time, he doesn't quite have this bristly edge to him that seems to be driven by wanting to prove people wrong or putting the barriers up because he feels everybody's against him.
I mean, I've never known a player create so many enemies and invisible enemies as Jude Bellingham, but, that might be what makes him a player that he is. Well, one player that doesn't do that is the total opposite, is Harry Kane. Harry Kane is the absolute polar opposite of Jude Bellingham. And maybe the perfect blend is somewhere in the middle, but, Harry Kane, again, has had a great tournament, broken all kinds of records, England's top scorer at a World Cup. He's in the shake-up with the likes of Messi and Mbappe and Pele. He's gone ahead of Pele in the all-time World Cup scorers. So England legend, there's a debate about whether he's England's greatest player or not. And I think, I think you have to kind of part that because England have won a World Cup and people like Bobby Charlton deserve a bit of kind of reflected glory on that. But Harry Kane, is this the end of the road or should he still be pushing to play at the World Cup in 4 years' time when he's 37? Bearing in mind, he's not very mobile at 33.
I think that's a bit harsh. But
he wasn't last night.
Well, England have had an issue the whole tournament about getting Kane the ball. We've been looking at the stats the whole way through the first half, and more often than not, by the time half-time ticks around, Kane has had the fewest touches out of any player in the World Cup. In the England team. So look, there's issues there about how perhaps they need to find a better way to find him. He's still scoring. I mean, he basically kept them in the World Cup with that double against DR Congo. So look, but I think heading forward, I expect him fully to be there in 2 years' time. I think one of the major issues England have is if, for example, if Kane decided tomorrow, I'm done, this is me done, where do they go next? Like the age group, the young England strikers just aren't there. The next option is probably Liam Delap. James and I were talking about this last night. If you look at sort of the age profile of the guys who are hoping to be there in 4 years' time for the World Cup, it's not looking good there. So perhaps this is also why Tuchel was looking so down last night. I mean, obviously they'd lost the World Cup semi-final, but if you're looking at sort of the way that stars aligned with the age profile of the group, Declan Rice is in his prime, Bellingham's 23, but obviously he's going to improve, but still unbelievable player. Morgan Rogers, the right sort of age. The age profile's there to win this tournament. And Kane, I do feel this was his best chance to win a World Cup. Whether he's there in 4 years' time or not, perhaps. Look, he could perhaps be the Jordan Henderson in 4 years' time. We just don't know. Kane, fundamentally, he was talking about this last night. He's 33. He's been looking at Messi, seeing how Messi keeps on going at 39. Very, very different types of players. But perhaps Kane adapts and, maybe he moves himself further back and then, plays a sort of more of a false nine heading forward. But look, I think when it comes to Harry Kane in England, it's going to eventually be up to Kane to decide on this. I know that in the past...
No, it's not. No. Listen, players don't get to decide, right? This is the problem that England have had over the years. David Beckham, when they went on too long, it's up to the coach. It shouldn't be up to Harry Kane or whoever to say, no, I'll carry on. If they're not playing well, they don't play. So this is part of the England team. It doesn't matter. This is the problem with England. There's so much kind of, nostalgia and kind of let's be nice to everybody. If he's not up to it, now he's up to it right now. But if it gets to a point where he's not up to it, then he has to move on. What happened in the past shouldn't earn him the right to be in the squad in 2 years' time if he's not doing it. So I don't buy into that at all. Once you're done, you're done. And that's where Pep Guardiola and Alex Ferguson over the years have been great. When a player's done, they're done. You don't kind of have a farewell tour because you scored goals 5-6 years ago. So, I mean, James, you have the final word in this. If Harry Kane is playing for England at 37 the next World Cup, that is an indictment on the England squad, isn't it, surely?
Well, it'll also be an indictment on the lack of alternatives. And he is somebody who, through his whole career, English media are often criticised for building up players too quickly and hailing them as the next Maradona, Pele, whatever. He's invited those comparisons with Ronaldo and Messi. He's wanted to be in that bracket. He's talked about it on the record repeatedly for years. So he will be seeing what Ronaldo and Messi are doing and how long they're playing and looking at that next World Cup thinking, I can do it. I'm sure he will be. The question really is whether he will accept a reduced role or not. Because I think having a 37-year-old Harry Kane off the bench for 20 minutes when you need a goal, I can see the argument for that. A 37-year-old Harry Kane as captain, leading the line, playing every game, not undroppable or, not impossible to take him off, but the situation is quite unusual for him to be taken off, when England are winning or losing. I'm not sure he would command that position. And would he be able to let it go to the extent that he could accept a bit part role? We talked a lot about Ronaldo during this tournament, and it's a similar situation. Ronaldo, even now at his age, if you needed a goal with 20, 30 minutes to go coming off the bench, he's a phenomenal finisher. He's still in impeccable condition. But the idea that he leads the line, he plays every minute, he's past that point in his career. And I think maybe in 4 years' time, that could be the debate we're having about Harry Kane. But look, I don't think there's any doubt because of his status in the team. Let's not completely throw out his ridiculous goal-scoring record at Bayern Munich, although I know, Mark, you think that's kind of pointless. But, the guy has been phenomenal in the Champions League, in the Bundesliga. His England record is incredible. He will be leading the line at Euro 2028. I can't see any way that isn't going to happen. And if England have a good tournament, then he'll want to go on.
Right, so a quick end to this because we've kind of gone over time a little bit here, but does anybody care about this game on Saturday, the third and fourth place playoff? Should it actually be being played? Seriously?
Oh, Mark, what a great way to set that up. As somebody who's now got to go to Fort Lauderdale and then try and get to New York in the space of 24 hours to then do the third place game and the final, you fill me with enthusiasm. I mean, no, look, obviously, what you got to look at this from the players' point of view, right? I mean, they've just been knocked out of the World Cup semi-finals. They're absolutely on their feet. They flew last night. They flew back to their base in Kansas City, so they landed in, late on Wednesday night. I don't know this, but I suspect they might have had a beer or certainly a bit of a debrief after the game. They'll be waking up late on Thursday morning. They'll have to have their recovery session, and then they'll be flying to Florida. In the heat, I haven't checked, but I assume it's going to be a classic sort of Miami intense occasion. And let's not forget how draining the last time they played in Miami was, 120 minutes against Norway. They're out on their feet, and I go back to an interview that I did with Declan Rice. He came off the pitch in Singapore for their pre-season training. They'd done quite an intense session in the heat to start building themselves up. And it was July the 20th. 2025. And I said to him, we did an interview with him in the mix zone. I said to him, do you know when the World Cup final is? And he said, no. And I said, it's July the 19th. If everything goes to plan, you will be playing football continuously for a year. And this game, it's not the game they want to play, but it will be taking place on July the 18th. And for a lot of these guys, they have played football for a solid year at the highest level: Premier League, Champions League, Europa League, internationals, World Cup. It's a game too far. They all want to go home. As a spectacle, I suspect we're going to watch Kylian Mbappe and Harry Kane try and win the Golden Boot. But beyond that, I don't think there'll be much competition at all. I don't see how England win the game at all. I think they're done. I think they just want to go home.
I don't think goals in this game should count. It's offensive to Lionel Messi in the final. If he's going for the Golden Boot in a World Cup final, and you've got Mbappe and Kane playing in what is basically a testimonial pre-season friendly. Anyway, Tom, are you up for it? Are you ready to roll for the 3rd and 4th place playoff?
No, absolutely not. No, I'm going straight to New York. I mean, maybe they should play the 3rd, 4th playoff in the halftime show on at the World Cup final.
Would they have enough time though?
They could just do 5 aside. Yeah. That would make it a lot easier, to be honest.
All right, so let's stop being cynical then. Prediction for the 3rd and 4th place playoff.
France 4, England 2.
James.
Yeah, 3-1 France. I did the game in 2018 when England lost to Belgium, and I always remember Kieran Trippier, seeing him after that game. He couldn't walk. He couldn't walk. He was hobbling through the mix zone, and I think the players are in that similar vein again. So I just don't see how England win it.
Maybe Kobe Mainoo's brother can bring out that free Kobe Mainoo t-shirt again, because I think we need to free Kobe Mainoo and playing this game in Miami. We haven't seen Kobe Mainoo in the whole World Cup, so maybe it's the Kobe Mainoo game. But anyway, I'm being facetious. There's a big game on in New York at the weekend, so let's have a more upbeat ending. Who's going to win the World Cup? James.
Well, I went for Spain before it started. A lot of my predictions have been terrible, but I did go for Spain, so I have to stick with them. I think what they've done is they've done that trick of lulling everybody into a bit of a false sense of security by not playing very well at the start. They've peaked at the right time. They've gone up a level. Obviously, they took it to new heights really against France, and I can just see them doing that again. I think they'll find a way. They'll keep the ball better than England did against Argentina. I think they'll find a way to keep Messi quiet, and I think they'll win the World Cup.
Tom?
Yeah, agreed. I think Spain will win 3-1. I think they'll score, and then unlike England, they'll continue attacking. We saw how they managed that game against France. They were absolutely brilliant. They managed to keep a handle on Mbappe and Dembele. They'll do the same with Messi. They've got really good strength and depth. They've got so many different options off the bench if needed, and they've got Rodri who can control everything.
I mean, this has been Lionel Messi's tournament, hasn't it? It's been the Messi World Cup, but Lamine Yamal's been quiet. I can just see a situation on Sunday where Lamine Yamal steals the show in the World Cup final, makes it all about him, and it's a kind of a classic handing over of the baton. So I'm going for Spain. I'm going to go for Yamal to star on the big stage, and then that'll be the end of it. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks for the start of the Premier League season. So we won't be away for too long. So thanks for listening to the Football Reporters from the USA.